You have to click on their comment, and then
it
you can delete
we're
them.
live. Hi. So one more Facebook Live, and this time we have a very interesting topic, and we're going to talk about the war and the vocabulary, because I have many students that have trouble reading the newspapers or listening to the news. So I thought it was a good idea to start with this, with vocabulary, and then to have a conversation. So Craig suggested we're going to have a conversation later. But the first thing is I'm going to say my name. My name is Mónica. I have a blog that's called Blog para Aprender Inglés, and Blog del Inglés is the new one. And you can find all kinds of free materials to learn English and explanations in Spanish. If you have trouble with explanations in English, you can go there and find many resources. And here with me is Craig William. One more time. Hello, nice to have you today with me.
Hi, hello. Thank you for joining us, everyone. And if you're watching the replay, thank you for spending time with us today. It's really nice I'm really excited to be speaking about this very topical, controversial war that's happening, and it'll be an interesting discussion, I hope, when people start joining us and giving us their opinions.
Okay, so tell us about what you do, because you didn't say anything.
Yes.
Yes.
I think, well, Gemma and Heidi, hello, they know what I do. I write material for mansioningles.com, which is a website where you can learn English for free. And we also have a podcast that is at inglespodcast.com and wherever you find your podcasts. And if you're studying for the B2 First Cambridge exam, I have a course that is going to begin, a 30-day course on the 4th of April. And you can see more details about that on englishmasterclass.com.
B2, yeah. B2, very, very important. First certificate. No?
Cambridge, yes.
Cambridge, he's an expert, I have to say. He doesn't say it, but he's an expert because he was an examiner, a Cambridge examiner. So the course must be fantastic. For sure you're going to pass. So let's start. This is very easy. Before we started the talk, we were talking about the different terms, and I found out that it's quite difficult because we're not used to this vocabulary. I mean, you have an idea, like you have it in Spanish, no? You have an idea about the vocabulary, but you don't know deeply the meaning of these words until you don't use them and look for the definition. No? And well, the first one I saw, because the vocabulary we're going to talk today about is from the news. I did not go to a dictionary or a list of military words. No, because this is, for me, outdated. It's just, I often watch CNN or read CNN news, BBC also, everything in English. And what the advantages is that you get a bigger perspective. I think that's
important to sorry to interrupt, but I think it's really important to emphasize that probably if you're watching this, you're learning English, there's a good chance you're watching your news in your language. And we have a lot of Spanish speakers watching. It's a really good idea from time to time, or maybe regularly, to listen to English news. And then you'll need some of these words because they're very common at the moment in the news about the war. So from time to time, make sure you're listening to English news. It will improve your English and will give you another perspective on what's happening in the world. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt on that.
No, but it's true. That's what I was going to say too, because it's a broader sources and people saying maybe the things from different angles, and it's very good to have this critical thinking. Yeah. So one of the first terms are military forces. Usually you will see forces that attack. Everywhere you see forces. This is relatively easy because it's exactly the same in Spanish. No, I don't see a difference there with the Spanish, but you'll see this word everywhere. Forces have attacked. The Russian forces the Ukrainian, the whatever, any or the NATO forces, all that. No, so this is a very common word, and then we have to start also describing a little bit the different types of war. Well, very, I think, superficially, but what we have here is an invasion and not an insurgency. What is an insurgency, Craig?
An insurgency is exactly what happened in Ukraine in 2014, because before 2014, there was a government that was pro-Russian, and the population of Ukraine wanted democracy. So the people who take part in the insurgency are called insurgents, and they rebel against the government, against the regime, and they want to change it. So there was an insurgency in Ukraine in 2014 that was, as we know, successful. And you often hear insurgents when speaking about problems in Syria, Iran, Iraq. So insurgency are people who are revolting or fighting against the government because they want to change it. It's very similar to rebels or rebellion.
Yeah, this is an interesting term, revolting against the government, no? And it's the same in Spanish. It's actually a Latin term. I suppose it's Latin, this. And so it's very easy to understand. Mm-hmm. And, well, other kinds of war, Cold War. The Cold War is a period of time when you study history, no? After the Second World War, it started a period of what's called the Cold War. So it was a war that was not hot. So it was just, I think the definition could be something like that I don't go into a war, but I don't do it only because I don't want to hurt anybody. And so I'm going to keep threatening both parts, both civilizations, I would say, Western and the Western and the Eastern civilizations opposed each other, and they were just showing their claws, their teeth, you know, saying, we're not going to go into a war, but it's a Cold War, no? Mm-hmm. I don't know. You have a better definition.
No, you've explained it very well. And if you think of Russia and America having the Cold War when the Iron Curtain was down.
Iron Curtain,
they were against each other, but there was no fighting. But the Cold War got quite hot in 1962 when the Russians wanted to put missiles, nuclear missiles in Cuba.
In Cuba,
and suddenly the Cold War was
hot.
Getting really, really hot, and luckily nothing happened, and it returned to being a Cold War. Just want to say that Hema says that she follows BBC News. That's great, Hema, but I also suggest that you listen to other news to get a balance. So listen to CNN, listen to Al Jazeera, listen to other English-speaking news networks, because the BBC is okay. It's reasonably fair, but it's also good to hear what other news networks are saying as well.
Yeah. So, and the last one we have here is a religious war. Well, there are many other types of wars, but I just took 4 examples that there are different types of war. Religious war are going on always, no? Especially Muslims.
Since Bible time, since biblical times, unfortunately,
we have, it's non-stop. Religious wars are everywhere. And in Europe we had the Muslims and the Christians, and we had many years of war. Because of religious reasons.
Yugoslavia.
Religious reasons. Then we'll talk about weapons. And here I must admit that I don't have too much idea of the different types of weapons.
Luckily.
I know. I wanted to say something about weapons. The pronunciation of weapons is weapons, not weapons. A lot of people pronounce weapons. I understand. I completely understand that, because they ask me, and why is it meat and not weapons? And why is it sometimes it's E and sometimes it's A? And I don't have an answer for that. I really don't have an answer. You have
We're sorry. I'm very sorry.
Yeah,
I feel responsible because I'm British, but I don't know why the pronunciation's so difficult. There's another word for weapons, and that's arms. Like your arm.
Yeah.
The plural of arms, which is similar if you're a Spanish speaker.
Spanish is very easy, but weapons is the Germanic term, and it's, I think, much more used than arms because it's Germanic and conversation. But think about types of weapons. Could be a machine gun. A machine gun is ametralladora in Spanish. This is a machine gun. Also, there are different types of machine guns. I was looking and I don't know the spectrum, the range of machine guns, but there are different types of machine guns. Then you have handgun. And handgun is a revolver. I don't know. There are many different names. Pistol, a rifle, maybe. A
rifle is not a handgun because you need 2 hands to fire it. It's long.
Ah, okay. So there's a difference between long and short.
Yeah, rifle, shotgun. Shotgun is used for hunting birds in the countryside. And rifle is long, and a machine gun is also long, but it's
long,
semi-automatic, so it fires many bullets at once.
At the same time, yeah. And then we have artillery. And I would like you to explain what artillery is. The same word in Spanish, comes from Latin, because probably the Romans were the first one that started, well, the first one. The wars started before in prehistory. But the Romans probably contribute with a lot of weapons, and this word sounds to me very Latin, artillery. So what is exactly artillery?
It's heavy arms or heavy weapons. For example, mortars that fire, they're kind of grenades and you can fire them a very long way. That's an example of artillery. So when you see on the news that in Ukrainian cities are under fire from artillery, those are the bombs that are usually being fired from tanks or from mortars, from portable mortars or mortars on the back of trucks, and they're firing these artillery shells, and that's where the verb to shell comes from. They're shelling the enemy, and the bombs are falling in the city.
We're going to talk later about shelling. Yeah,
but it's connected because shelling is artillery shells. Yeah. It's connected.
Yeah. But before we go into shelling, I wanted to talk about to seize. And to seize is like to capture by force. And aprender, or there's another word in Spanish I cannot remember. But
you said to grab, I think, as well.
To grab,
or to take by force.
To grab. And I want to say, for example, an example, she jumped up and seized his arm. So it's not only in war, you can use it in a normal speech, no? Like to grab like this, no? To seize. But if you seize a city, what happens? You
take it by force. Yeah.
Exactly. This is exactly what has happened in Kiev. What is the pronunciation of Kiev?
All my life, I thought it was Kiev with 2 syllables.
Kiev,
and maybe you've eaten chicken Kiev, which is a lovely meal of chicken with cheese and breadcrumbs. Kiev. It was always Kiev. Suddenly, it's now pronounced on the news Kiev with just 1 syllable.
That's what Kiev. Because that's the way Ukrainians say.
So probably that's the way in Ukrainian.
And Haide is asking us if to seize is capturar.
Capture is the English of capturar. Is there a difference?
I think it's a type of, it's a way of capturing something by force. Yeah, because maybe sometimes you capture something and you don't use any force.
Yeah, it's that they can be synonyms, Heidi, when you're speaking about capturing a city or a town or seizing a city or a town. The meaning is exactly the same. However, with collocation, they can have different meanings because you can capture something on your screen if you take a photo of it.
Exactly. Capture has another.
So it depends on the use. But in what we're speaking about today with war and conflict, then yeah, it means the same.
And Gemma says, take possession of something. Yeah, take possession of something by force, no? By force, as always by force. The difference is by force. No, you have. So, and this is similar, besiege, but the sound, and it's confusing, no, for Spanish-speaking students, because they seize and besiege. And then you say, what is the difference here? There is a difference. What is the difference?
The word you had before, to seize with the Z, there's no
vibration.
It's not voiced. Seize.
And,
no, both. I'm sorry. Let me start again. So seize with the Z, there is vibration. It's the
vibration. That's what I say.
Sound. Like buzz, for example, B-U-Z, double Z. The noise that a bee makes is buzz. To seize. With siege, it's the J, like judge or January or June. It's that J sound, which is a different consonant sound. So it's the consonant sound that changes. Seize and siege.
They sound different, but also they mean something different. Besiege is sitiar, cercar. So when you surround a city, for example, with military forces, and the people cannot go in or go out. And this is the case of, I think, is what is the pronunciation again of that? Mariupol, the city, a city in Ukraine,
is besieged.
Has been besieged, and is still besieged. I think
it is. Yes, it is.
Still.
You can also say under siege. That's a common collocation. So Mariupol is currently under siege.
Under siege, yeah. And
by the Russians.
Cercar or acosar, yeah.
Exactly.
In this case, it's cercar. So, or sitiar, also another. And then, when was the last time you had an ambush? This definition of ambush.
Well, there's the military meaning, and then there's another idiomatic meaning that we can look at. So when soldiers want to capture or kill the enemy, they hide in a position and they wait until the enemy comes close. And then they start shooting, or they jump out and they take hostages. So they're waiting quietly for the enemy to get close. And then they surprise the enemy and either kill them or capture them. But you can use that idiomatically. For example, if you go to a meeting, or you in a situation with friends, and they start asking you questions that you didn't expect, you can say, I was ambushed by these surprising questions. I didn't expect to hear what they said. So you can ambush someone in conversation by saying something surprising. So the meaning is very similar, but no one gets killed.
It's exactly the same in Spanish, and I'll say the word in Spanish because some people still probably don't know what exactly the meaning is. It's emboscada. So an ambush is an emboscada. And it's like exactly what Craig said. So you're hiding, and then suddenly you jump and you capture these people. Either you kill them, or you send them to prison. You know. So, but the fact is that the people who are captured don't see you. Okay, they don't see you coming. So this is very typical in wars. No?
Yeah,
because they are hiding behind a wall or something. It's tactics of a war. And then we have missile or missile strike or attack. And this has been, well, we just checked that missile, the pronunciation with I, is British. And missile,
I did not know that. As Monica said, there are two pronunciations: missile or missile. And I just assumed that missile, which is probably what I would say is British English, but no, missile is more typically British English, and missile is American English pronunciation.
So you were speaking American lately?
I'm a victim of the news, I think. Yes, I've been watching too much CNN in American
and your
English.
English starts to change because you don't live in the UK. So you start just listening different English.
Also, with some words, it doesn't really matter. People understand you if you say missile or missile, so it doesn't really matter.
Well,
and to strike is to hit suddenly. You can strike somebody on the face. So if it's a missile strike, then the place is being struck by bombs and missiles, being attacked. So it's strike, struck, struck. It's irregular.
Yes, and this is what has been happening in Kiev. Kiev has been happening in Kiev in the last days, no?
Yeah.
Lots of missile strikes.
Yeah.
Every day, I think they have that, or no? Collocations here: to hit, to attack, or to be under attack. There are many cities in Ukraine under attack. Okay, attack also active verb, to attack, or to hit. Hit is a very good verb, because I like these verbs that don't really conjugate, because it's hit, and so you're always correct. Doesn't matter. So, for example, the bomb hit the target, no, and it has in this case in Spanish will be la bomba dio con el objetivo, no? It's like golpeó o llegó, or many other verbs. Hit is also pegar, no? To hit some.
Yep.
But in this case, when we're talking about bombs and missile attacks, to hit is dar con algo, no? To hit.
You can also have the collocation a direct hit, and that's something you might hear in the news. There has been a direct hit on a hospital, or a direct
like this happened in Mariupol. I am very confused, because that's not English. The problem is it's Ukrainian, and then this is the way they pronounce it in English, and in Spanish they pronounce it in a completely different way.
But what's interesting is that I knew really nothing about Ukraine before the war, and now I feel like I have a good idea of the geography, not only of Ukraine, but the area, and also the names of the cities in Ukraine.
Yes.
And I had no idea before about this area.
I'll say hello to Carlos that just joined.
Hi, Carlos. Thanks for joining. And hi, Marcela.
Marcela, too. Marcela joined some minutes ago. And then you have an airstrike, an air assault. We could not think of the difference of these. Craig said airstrike is one time, and air assault is in general, no?
An assault could be continual, so it could last for days, it could last for weeks. But a strike, which is similar to a hit, is probably just a one event, an airstrike.
Sorry. In the Second World War, I remember watching films about that, and I remember seeing films in London in the Second World War when there was going to be an airstrike. The alarms went off, and there was this and everybody were running. They were
sirens,
sirenas. The sirens went off, and the people went to hide in the cellars, no?
The shelters.
The shelters, special shelters. No? So they had already built shelters.
And that connects to the next word as well, because they used to hide in air raid shelters, because
it was called like that. Air
raid shelters, because the raid was the bombing of the city by the enemy.
I remember when I was a kid that there was an insecticide that was called Raid. And
it still exists. We have one here.
It still exists.
Yeah.
But I remember the commercial they used to sell this insecticide, and it was several flies, like cartoons, like very evil, attacking, somebody, and then suddenly raid came and you sprayed, and all the flies were dead in 1 minute. And this is exactly what a raid is. It's usually, the funny thing is that is an attack. I need an adjective there. It's a special kind of attack that, wait a minute, is a surprise attack by a small force. A surprise, that's what I was going to say. Surprise attack by a small force. That's a raid. And not only an insecticide.
The children raided the sweet drawer or the biscuit tin. They raided it. They dived in and they ate all the biscuits.
Then there's a regular verb. A raid as a noun, no?
Yeah.
And raid
and
as
a verb.
Yeah, it's also a verb.
Gemma said she also remembers it. The air raid
good.
sirens.
So you're same generation. I remember this commercial because I always remember this. Exactly, raid. I also remember it, raid. So then the difference here, to bomb, you're going to read these two words, bomb and bombardment. Yeah, bomb. This is for you.
The second B is silent, so you don't hear the second B. It's bomb. B-O. Just think B-O-M.
Bomb. Yeah,
that's the pronunciation. Bomb. And bombardment, the noun, is the continual bombing or shelling of a place. So you might hear on the news that your city in Ukraine was bombed by the Russians, or there was a bombardment during the night on Mariupol, for example. So,
but I think also has to do with bomb is to bomb with a bomb. And bombardment can be other things like different kind of weapons. Yeah, that's what I read. No, there's the difference. Not exactly because you can say they have been bombarding. Though also sounds old. It sounds antique. This word, bombardment.
Well, also war is old now because wars don't exist. Have you noticed that nobody is at war anymore? It's a conflict now.
Yeah, they use sometimes conflict.
So we don't have wars anymore. We just have conflicts. It's not.
Well, I don't know. I have heard the word war a lot, and nuclear war too.
Nuclear war, yeah.
New. Again, here's shelling. What is the origin of this word? Because shelling is similar to bombing or bombarding, no?
Yeah, shelling, because we had the word before artillery, so that collocates with artillery. So an artillery shell.
Yeah.
Bombs are often dropped by aeroplanes, and shelling is often projected or shot by artillery. So artillery shelling and bombing, they're kind of similar, but some come from the air. Usually bombs come from the air, and shells are fired by artillery units.
Yeah, and then we have something, the Allies. The Allies, well, I think most people that went to secondary school know this. After the Second World War, or in the Second World War already, this terminology was very common because you had the Allies and what was the other one? The Allies and...
The opposite of allies, you mean? Or?
No, because the Allies were the Americans with the British and France and who else? And then you had the Germans, the Nazis. No, but there was a name. I don't remember. Well, anyhow, after the Second World War, we have an institution, an organization that in Spanish called OTAN. And remember, in English is NATO, not OTAN. So NATO, this is the NATO.
NATO, not NATO, NATO.
No,
North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
Exactly. North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the same acronym, but on the other way around, if you read it the other way. And the Allies now are, I understand, are the countries that belong to NATO. Those are the Allies. Then we have a Spanish word. This is really very to surrender. I think it's exactly like in Spanish, or very similar. And there's a song, I think a very famous song or popular, Surrender, but it's talking about love. And es rendirse, no? To surrender.
Exactly.
Surrender. Another very important word, casualties. Casualties. And this is difficult to get because you read casualties in Spanish and you think, what is that? Casualidades? Because it doesn't ring a bell, this thing. Casualties has nothing to do, but actually casualties are people that are dead.
Injured.
Or injured.
Or injured.
Dead or injured?
Both.
I would say casualties.
Casualties of war.
Yeah, casualties
or conflict.
Yeah, and I would say the official definition: a person killed or injured in a war or an accident. Important thing: casualties is only for wars or accidents, not in general. And then one of the results of war is refugees.
We've heard a lot about those recently.
Yeah. Well, tons of refugees, and a lot of people also. It shows the generosity of some people. Really, I've seen incredible stories on the news, no, about refugees being helped by people in other countries and taken to their homes, and then when you are under attack, you flee, no, flee.
Run away.
Flee, run away. So flee is a very common verb now. To flee is to escape. Look, Gemma says casualties could be damnificados in Spanish. Yeah, it could be. Yeah, because you're injured or you are killed. Okay, so let me see here. Okay, I think we more or less cover all the words that we had in the list. And so now we can have a conversation. And the people that are watching us, I really would like them to give their opinions, because Craig is telling me in many occasions, he says, I think my opinions might be controversial. And
maybe we'll see. We'll see what you think, Monica, and also we'll see what people are watching live think. And also, if you're watching the replay after the fact, please write your comments under the video, because I'll be going in tomorrow for the next week to see what you think and what your opinions are. I'm very interested to know what the general opinion is, because I don't really speak to anybody. So I'm really interested to know what you think about what's happening in Ukraine.
Okay, so the first, this was, no, I'm going to, this was your,
I was
the second one?
to know.
And the first one, this one.
Okay, so is this the one we're talking about? It doesn't matter which one we speak about first. What other conflicts and cases of human suffering? Because for the last 2 weeks, now, to be fair, it's not true of the news I've been watching in Spain, because news in Spain, of course, the main story, the headlines you hear about, the war in Ukraine. But also they give other news and other stories. However, Gemma said that she's been watching the BBC. There's so much coverage of the war on the BBC, for example, and on other media channels. And I was curious, because it seems like it's the only thing that's happening in the world, or the only war or conflict that's happening. So I did some research on the website, and I wanted to know what other conflicts, wars, or any human sufferings happening in other parts of the world. The war is still going on in Ethiopia. People are dying every day. More than 50,000 people have died in the Eritrea and Tigray area of Ethiopia. Nothing on the news. People are dying in Afghanistan. We don't hear about that anymore. It's still going on. People are dying of malnutrition. There's a war in Iran. There's a war in Iraq. Libya is being bombed. Yemen is being bombed by American forces. There's been over 140,000 people that have died there, and that war is about oil and gas. Myanmar, we hear nothing about Myanmar, the fact that the government took control of Myanmar. And there's there are so many wars in sub-Saharan Africa at the moment, in Chad, in Somalia. The European Union is fighting jihadis, and they're fighting Al-Shabaab in Somalia and other countries. There's a war in Congo. There's a war in Nigeria. But there's nothing on the news. It's just not being spoken about. And also, there are 12 minor wars, apart from those, happening, where we've seen between 100 and 1,000 deaths in each of those 12 minor wars. And it is really horrible, and it's really bad what's happening in Ukraine. But it would be, I think, informative if we also heard about other people dying in other wars, in other places in the world. What do you think?
I agree with you, but I think it's very human what happens is that when the war can affect you personally, because the difference between those wars that you mentioned and Ukrainian is that Ukraine can affect us. The wars in Ethiopia, Afghanistan, you name it.
You don't think it's because Ukrainian people are white?
No, I think the only reason why they have so much coverage is because it can happen, it can spread, and it can become a much bigger conflict, if you don't want to use the word. And that's the reason why they cover it, because it's just right next door. Ukraine is not so far away from from the north part of Western Europe, no? And that's the reason why they have this coverage, because it's like, well, if you see a fire in a city that is 10 kilometers away from where you live, you look and you say, oh, maybe it's dangerous. But if you see a fire next to your door, I'm sure you're calling the firemen and you're running and you're worried, and because that's human. I think that's the reason. I don't think it's really a political reason. It's just that people pay for the newspapers, the online newspaper, the subscription, and they're going to be more interested in something that is happening next door than something that is happening very far away, for sure. And so I agree with you. And they live from the media, they live from the advertising, they live from the. So if you tell me about something about in Ethiopia, I'm not talking about myself, but in general. So, well, this is very far away. That's
too far.
Yeah, too far away. That's, I think, the reason. Maybe some people in the audience say.
Hemmer agrees with you. She says, I agree with you, but maybe the war in Ukraine is closer to us. I think that's one reason. I agree. I think it is closer to us, but it's also because I think maybe we, as Europeans, we identify more with the Ukrainians because we see that they're living in Europe and their lifestyle is very similar to us, but that doesn't make them any less or any.
Yeah, but
that doesn't make the other people any less human.
No, absolutely, you're right. But that's the second reason why they give it more coverage, because it's not the same that something happens to your family, that something happens to somebody you don't know in another family. It's something like that. No? You identify with people that are similar to you. I think that might be the reason.
Yeah.
And that's the reason it's worrying more Europe. And then, okay, another question. Why are we not being told in the media about the root causes of the conflict?
Well, let me ask you, and let me ask Gemma and Marcella and Heidi, why did this war start? Why did Putin decide to invade? What's the reason? I mean, you hear on the news sometimes, oh, he's crazy, he's mad, he's a despot, he's like a Hitler. I heard him being compared to Hitler. Is that the reason? It could be. Maybe he is mad. But what do we know? What is the media telling us about why this happened in the first place? They're not telling us anything. There's no information about why Russia could want to do this.
Yes, I agree with you. And in fact, my main source of information for this has been Twitter. Twitter is quite good for this because you get different, let's say what Hama said, always to the unjust and absurd.
Unjust means unfair. Yeah.
Unfair. Okay. I was following a Twitter thread about a journalist that made some summary about the war, and then I was reading the comments to this Twitter thread.
Yeah.
And then I found a video of 2015 by a professor in Chicago in the United States talking about this problem. And it's incredible because the video disappeared after one day, but I found it on YouTube. And he said that we shouldn't take Ukraine like something superficial, because it was key for Russia to keep this country as a buffer, like a kind of buffer between the Western Europe and Russia. No,
you better explain what a buffer is.
A buffer is in Spanish is un amortiguador, no? Like something
to protect something.
To protect. He says something like it was like a country like was a buffer, and that if you try to encourage them, because this is what the Western governments have been doing, the European Union, encourage them to join the NATO and join the European Union and all that, Russia is going to be pissed off. And this is exactly, and he said this in 2015, okay? And because they take this part, geographically, they are neighbors, and they take this part as something like that belongs to their sphere of power. So I suppose Putin felt the threat, and he said, okay, that's it, guys. I mean, stop with the story, because some years ago, they had a pro-Russian president. And another one there was one president that was poisoned. And now this president is much more pro-European, and you can see the way he talks, the way he, it's so European that he could be one of us, and that's the problem. That's the root of the problem, no?
No, you're right.
Agree? Do you agree?
I do agree, but I think it's even deeper than that, because if you go back to when the Berlin Wall came down, which was, I think, was it 1989 or 1990? And America promised Russia that if they agreed that Germany would come together and they would unify Germany, that NATO wouldn't expand. NATO wouldn't go further towards Russia. But they didn't keep their promise. There was no treaty. It was just they had promised them, and I think it's written down somewhere in a meeting that they had, that they wouldn't expand. But NATO's expanded with Romania, with Poland, with Lithuania, with the Baltic states. It's Europe's expanded, so it's not only militarily with NATO, but it's also economically with the European Union. And democracy's expanding. And maybe you think, well, that's okay, isn't it? Democracy is good. And it is, it's positive, but not if you're Putin. If you're Putin, you don't want that to happen.
No, exactly.
Imagine if there were missiles, like if Spain, suddenly there were missiles in Portugal or France, and they were that close to us, we wouldn't like it.
No.
And America didn't like it when Russia put missiles in Cuba.
Exactly.
There was nearly a nuclear war. So you kind of understand why he's so much against. I'm not making excuses for it, but I think that's not being said enough on the news. They're not explaining to us that history and why he's so frightened of NATO expanding. He doesn't want nuclear missiles on the Ukrainian border with Russia.
Exactly. And that's why Zelensky said the other day that they might not be a part of the NATO. He already is thinking about that. So, and that's one of the reasons. So it's very
so maybe Putin's maybe he's made his point. Maybe it's time for him to finish the war, because
I hope so.
Now NATO do understand that Ukraine can't be part of NATO because Russia doesn't want it, and I don't think China wants it either. Yeah,
and this brings me to critical thinking. This is very important. And that's why it's good to read also in English. not only in Spanish, no? Because for me, in my case, it was the video of this professor that really got me thinking and said, how come this guy said this thing in 2015 and there were only 3 professors saying these things, warning, say, be careful with them because this could be an issue, a very big issue if you go further with this. But nobody, of course, pays attention. They just
I think it was 2015 when Russia took Crimea.
Yeah, exactly. Probably because of that, he started saying that it was a very dangerous situation. But when Russia took Crimea, nobody really cared. So I suppose there was, because there was something out there that is not really the capital, so it's not as important. I don't know. But
the Crimeans, who like they were mainly Russian, so they wanted to be part of Russia. The difference is Ukraine now is it's an independent country with its own identity, and a lot of the people who live in the majority of Ukrainians don't want to be part of Russia.
No,
that's the difference.
And that's also
and also Crimea has Sebastopol, which is where the Russian Navy is based. So it's really important for them to have their navy on the Black Sea, which is in Crimea. So that is really important for them to have Crimea. So that's not going anywhere. That's going to be part of Russia, I think.
Yeah. So I had more questions, but I think we get too philosophical here. How have wars changed over the course of history? Now the problem here is no.
Have they changed? Really?
No.
Have they changed?
I would like to ask this question. Will we
Okay.
have a third world war in Europe?
Oh, God, I hope
a third world war in Europe, all over the world. That's why it's called war. So, what do you think, Craig?
I don't know. I think this is the most serious conflict war since the Second World War. There's no doubt that this is the most dangerous situation that Europe's been in since Hitler, for sure.
Yeah. For sure.
I mean, I hope there won't be. I think it could escalate out of control. For example, if some missiles went into Poland, or if Putin decided to do something stupid. It's very unstable at the moment. It's very, very unstable. Is that yours or mine?
Yeah, it's this is a new phone number, so whoever is calling, I don't know because I didn't give it to anybody. It's mine, but I cannot stop it because it's a landline. It's not the mobile. Yeah, it's stopped. Must be the telephone company that's calling me because this is the only one that knows the phone.
Maybe it's Putin who's calling you to disagree with you. But I mean, who knows? I don't know. It's very difficult. I certainly hope not, because it will be a disaster if there were. I don't think there will be.
I hope so, but I hope
you hope not.
I hope not. Exactly. Sorry. I hope not, because it will be a disaster.
Be nuclear, yeah. So we
because it will be a nuclear war, and that
we wouldn't be around.
That's another question. If we have a third world war, is it going to be a nuclear war, or is it going to be a war like it has been in Ukraine? Okay.
It will be nuclear.
Yeah, another. This time I should have turned off my phone and never thought about that. So I'm going to turn it off because of that. It should be for sure a nuclear war.
Yeah. I think it will be. Yeah, because if it escalates, then someone's going to press the button for sure. But I don't think it will come to that. I think.
Yeah, you have many ways to arrange this before that, because everybody will be hurt then. The thing is that this
But how will it finish, though? How will it finish? Because Putin obviously wants to save face. He doesn't want to be embarrassed by this.
Good expression. Save face. Salvar la cara. Salvar la cara. He said
not to be embarrassed.
So you have to give some concessions. Like today, Zelensky was saying, we won't join the NATO, for example.
And that must be one. That's why the talks are being said to be positive, because probably Ukraine have said, okay, we won't be part of NATO, which was what Russia wanted in the beginning.
Yeah.
So if Ukraine are agreeing to that, then that's one thing that they can compromise on.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, it could end with like a lot of Ukraine becoming part of Russia, because there's that Donetsk region, there's that bit in the east that where lots of Russians are living. So if there's that word you used before, Monica, a buffer, if there's an area of land protecting Russia from Europe, then that could work, and that would cause him to save face, and then he would take the forces out of Ukraine, and then Ukraine would go back to being a democracy under Zelensky. That's one solution. Or another possible solution is China, because I think China are becoming more and more embarrassed with their friends' behavior, with the way Putin's behaving, and they're being hit economically. And China want to defeat the West economically, I think, not militarily. No. So I think if China put pressure on Russia and on Putin, he's already asked them for help, I think. He already asked them for more money and asked them for more arms. If they put pressure on Putin, that could also cause the end of the war. And I hope one of those two things will happen, because if not, then it could get very...
Yeah, well, there will be some kind of agreement. There will be some kind of agreement that probably also changes a little bit the world, the balance of power in the world. And probably the beginning of the end of the dollar, because of all the restrictions that the oligarchs had with the dollar, the sanctions, and the Chinese could get hit by sanctions also with the dollar. So they might think next time we're going to get another currency, not the dollar.
Maybe so cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency, yeah. It could be that. And also the balance, you know, the balance of the world powers is different. It has shifted somehow, because we didn't know it was so important to be prepared to defend yourself.
Well, now that China knows that the West are not, that they will let a lot happen before they get involved in a conflict. So, for example, if China wanted to take control of Taiwan or the islands in the South China Sea that Japan claim as well, then they know that the West probably wouldn't interfere. Well, so that's something that China have learned from this conflict.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, should we review our vocabulary?
Yes.
And say goodbye? Okay. So we talked today about military forces. It's quite easy to know because it's the same in Spanish, fuerzas militares.
And different types of war. So to invade is the verb, or an invasion. Insurgency is similar to a rebellion, and insurgents are the people. We have the Cold War in between the Russia and the West for many years. Also religious wars, territorial wars, many different types of war.
Then we talked about the word weapon. Remember, it's weapon, not weapon. And types of weapons, for like machine guns, handgun, and artillery.
To seize is to take control by force. So you can say that the enemy seized control of the city. They took control of the city.
Or they besieged the city, which is different. That means cercar, no? So they put forces, military forces around the city. It's cercar or sitiar, besiege.
To ambush is to wait and hide quietly and then surprise someone, sometimes by killing them or just capturing them and taking them prisoner.
Okay, and then you have a missile or missile strike and a missile attack. Both pronunciations are correct, missile and missile. So, well, you all know what a missile is, I think. You see them on TV. It's very easy. It's the same word in Spanish. So
you can be hit, a town or a city or a country can be hit with missile attacks. And to attack is the verb, to attack a city militarily, or the preposition to be under attack.
And airstrike is, or an air assault is just the planes bombing the cities, no? And airstrike, we said that was like one time, and air assault is continuously having airstrikes. A raid.
You can use raid to kill your cockroaches or your mosquitoes if you have raid at home. And a raid is a quick, short attack, usually by a small group of soldiers, to capture something or to take control of something.
Then we have, this is very easy, because to bomb and bombardment. Bomb, remember, without the B, a silent letter. Bomb and bombardment. To bomb is to use a bomb to attack someone, and bombardment is more everywhere and different kinds of weapons. Shelling.
Yeah, the verb is to shell, and the noun is also a shell. It's similar to a bomb. Usually, more often, bombs are dropped by aeroplane, and shells are shot by artillery, by mortars and tanks.
And then you have allies. Allies are the group of countries that form part of the NATO, or OTAN in Spanish, NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
And to surrender is to give in. So you put up your hands, you wave a white flag, and you say, okay, I surrender, I give up, and you win. Okay.
And then you have the word casualties. Casualties are people either dead or injured in an accident or in a war. Remember? And Gemma found damnificados as the definition of casualties in Spanish. And then you have?
Yeah, refugees, very much in the news. The refugees that are escaping or fleeing, which is the last word that's coming up, to flee, to escape from the war-torn country. And Poland are accepting many refugees at the moment, for example. Spain as well are accepting refugees.
And to flee. Flee is to escape, to run away. Is another way to say to run away. Flee, fled, fled. Irregular verb. Okay, that's it. That's the end.
So yeah, try to watch the news in English. You will hear a lot of these words repeatedly being used in the news, and also try and vary and change the different channels and different ways that you expose yourself to the news, because the more information you get from different sources, then the more you can have a balanced
critical
opinion.
Thinking is very important to make decisions also, because if you want to make a decision, it's better that you have different views on the topic, especially if it affects you. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for coming.
Before we go, I just want to wish Gemma well, who's I think she's going into hospital next week. So thanks for joining, Gemma. I hope everything goes okay, and please let us know how you are next week. Okay.
So, okay, thank you very much for coming and joining us. And you'll see Craig in next week with Lynn.
Yep.
And hopefully me and 15 more days. Okay. So thank you very much, Gemma, also. And
thanks for joining. Take care.
Okay.
Have a good week.
Bye bye.